Hey guys, this is Rocket Man Dan. Today we'll be doing something a little bit special. Well, as you probably noticed in the thumbnail, we'll be travelling to Duna today, but we're only going to be using 8 parts. That's 8 parts total, and back again, getting Jeb back home safe on Kerbin. As you can see, I'm just quickly going through the build here, and I know it doesn't look very aerodynamic, but believe me, it works. That's a spark engine I've put on there, and as you can see there's just 8 parts being used. Just auto strutting the heck out of everything here, because if not it's got quite a tendency to wobble. Just make sure Jeb's on there and get it launched. Just try and blast through the launch as quick as we can. I've realised I haven't sorted the staging out quite right, but I'll sort that out later. It was a little bit wobbly on takeoff, honestly. It didn't really want to go where I wanted it to go, but with those vector engines, which is all they are really on the twin bore engine, it's just 2 vector engines, but obviously it gives me 2000 kilonewtons of thrust. And now with the new Delta V update, we can keep an eye on our thrust level, and I like to keep it just below 1.6 as I'm making my ascent. It just seems to have the right balance there. Some people like 1.4, 1.5, but I just like just below 1.6. And then as I get way higher up, I like to just cut that down just bit by bit and see what I can get away with. But I'm just going for a LKO here, just low Kerbin orbit, about 75,000. And then obviously circularise there. The main worry for me with this was not being in the sunlight at the right time. That's why I just deployed that solar panel as quick as I could, because obviously that little command pod there, it's only got 50 battery, and this is a lot of weight for that little reaction wheel to try and turn. So if I'm not in the sunlight and I'm trying to turn, it's not much use. And I just set Duna as target there, made a manoeuvre. I'd already fast forwarded time until it was an optimal transfer window to Duna. I'm just trying to do the final touches there, and if you can see, it's taken a long time just to turn me on over to manoeuvre, so I just used physics warp there. But that's 4 times physics warp and 4 times in post as well. It really is a slow beast to turn, but it'll be a lot lighter once we get rid of this transfer stage. Just trying to blast on through that transfer now. It's only really a relatively short burn to do as well. It's about 1,000, between say 1,050 and 1,100, depending on how your transfer window goes. But I just like to, slowly step up that time warping, because if not, things can just go way out of balance. Just make that mid-course correction, and it's still as fiddly as ever to try and do it with these analog sticks. I mean, that little manoeuvre planner that they have on PC is such a great thing. I've actually got a PC now, and I bought Kerbin for that as well, and it's a different game entirely. But obviously, usually going to Duna usually requires a lot of parts, and that can really affect a console, PS4 or an Xbox. But it just goes to show, you don't need the best gaming rig in the world to do these things either, because you can still go to Duna and only use 8 parts. You can use 9, 10, it doesn't really matter. But if you can just minimise on what you really need and what you don't. See, 1 solar panel, that's fine for this, just as long as we plan things right. And there we go, just line things up nicely. And we're at Duna already. It still looks amazing, especially since they updated things a little bit. And this is quite a long burn because there's only a little spark engine on the bottom there. There we go, just physics warp through it as well, because they really do take quite a while. Now this would have been very slow to take off on Duna if we didn't have to use some fuel to circularise now. That's why I chose to circularise at Duna. So it'd have the thrust to weight to take off at Duna as well. You think, well, why don't you just use a smaller fuel tank? But I've used this fuel tank on purpose because obviously with that spark engine protruding from the bottom, it's going to want to tip over, so I wanted as wide a base as possible, but still obviously light enough that it could take off. because we could have used a 5 metre part, but I don't think a spark engine would have took it. But now if you look, we've got a thrust to weight ratio of just over 1.4, and this really much is more luck than anything else. You've just got to try and land somewhere where you're not going to tip over. Now I was on quite a steep incline. This was actually my third attempt at doing the recording, not because I kept tipping over, but because the PS4 just didn't want to record for some reason. I'd get to about here, check on how the recording was going, and then realise it hadn't worked, so I was a bit frustrated. So this time I was just trying to get through it as fast as I could. The first time I actually did this mission, a mate of mine was talking about the least amount of parts you could probably need to go to Duna and back, and we set ourselves a challenge. And at the time I think we said something like, if we can do it in less than 30 parts, you know, that'll be it, we've done it. And then later on that evening he phoned me up. He said, I reckon you do it in less than 10. So I got straight on it and thought about what I needed and what I didn't, and it just turned out that I could do it in 8. And originally I did use a bigger fuel tank, and this was before the Delta V update, so you didn't know your thrust away, you didn't know how much Delta V you had. So I used the, I think it's the 3.75 metre, 3.5 sorry, size tanks, and I had the 32 with an aero spike on the bottom, and that wanted to tip like crazy. I must have, you know, tried landing about 5 times, and on the last attempt I nailed it. But this time I thought, well, if we can do it with a spark, even better, because it's not so proud out there. And as you see, we've already got back into orbit of Duna, got out, planted the flag, got back in, and I just back then I fast forwarded again to get the right transfer window. It's about 90 degrees if you look at it with Duna ahead. And then just fast forward on up to the manoeuvre. And it's a relatively short burn, you know, it's just over 600 metres a second, which is about average to get back from Duna. But obviously I just want to fast forward on through this with physics warp, because it still takes too long with that little spark engine. It's not got much thrust, but it's got enough to do what we need it to do. And obviously I'll just do a mid-course correction, just so I can get optimal to Kerbin. Now when I'm going for it as well, it didn't want to lock on to Kerbin, it didn't want to let me choose this target, but I got there in the end. And just if I plan that mid-course correction, just so it's about 35, but I've still got so much Delta V left, and I figure, well, why not put it to some use? So once I've made this manoeuvre, I can plan another burn. So it means I'm coming in at Kerbin a lot slower, because obviously I've got no heat shields and I'm not exactly very aerodynamic, so I just want to be going as slow as possible. If I had a heat shield on this, I'd just let it ride on through the atmosphere and just let the air slow me down. But if I plan another manoeuvre just here, doing radial out and retrograde, I can get the same effect and nearly use all of me Delta V. Which obviously, the less weight I land with, the slower I can go, because of the way Kerbin calculates the physics of it. I've noticed if you've got something just really heavy, like you're trying to land an asteroid, it really doesn't want to slow down at all. So just doing that manoeuvre there, and that's brought my periapsis down somewhere about 35,000. But if you can see, I'm actually in an orbit of Kerbin. If the atmosphere wasn't there, I'd just keep going round. If I just point retrograde, I mean, it doesn't help much, but I used the last of my fuel there just to burn retrograde, and I end up flipping all over, and I was really worried here, really worried I was going to explode. If you see those temperature gauges, it wouldn't have taken much to make it explode, so I'm really glad I did that second manoeuvre to use up all my Delta V. I've got a nice little view inside there. And I was really worried because I was you know, 18,000 metres and I wasn't slowing down much. As you can see, that command pod didn't have much else to give, it was going to explode. I was getting a little worried here, hoping things wasn't going to start speeding up again, so I just made Jeb bail. And that's it, just watch him spin down, and then he can just pop his chute. Obviously now I've had parachutes introduced, you don't need your craft to have a parachute on it anymore, so that really helps cut down. Ooh, nice little low close there. There we go. And I can never get these landings right, I always just plop over. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. If you'd like to like, share, subscribe, maybe leave me a comment, that'd be great. See you next time. Bye bye.